And if it's Friday, it must be time to go live, right, JP?
Yes, sir. Hello, y'all. How's it going?
It's good, and we got Toby here too. So we've had a fun week. I don't know if you saw my quick broadcast this morning for a few minutes, where just let everybody know. Hey, Ken, Whiskey Alpha 5, Alpha Sierra Alpha is there, and I left the remote up here to go home, and my wife calls me, says one of these counterweights is sitting on the grass. Anyway, my 80-meter had fallen down. There's Ray, Mr. Remote Ham Radio. It's good to have Ray with us. And so that's how I spent my 8 o'clock before it got windy, because I have to fire this thing over this 90-foot tree out of my air cannon, which some pictures in an earlier entry. And it works really well, but it's really good if it's absolutely calm, because then I can lay this 15-pound Kevlar line right over the tree, and type of thing. So I get the rest of that. I get the rest of that done at lunchtime. So we're back on the air. And Ray was on this morning too. I saw him, and we had I didn't get a chance to listen to where he was on, but yesterday I listened to Ray from Remote Ham Radio, and he was on talking to Europe, and I could hear both sides of the QSO, and the guys there were just booming in, and we had a good time listening to him for a while. And gee, Stu, you make it every week. At least that's one of the ones I remember. And
Anybody on 6 meters today?
you know, I looked at DX Maps, and if you don't watch DX Maps will tell you what's going on 6. And all the guys in the West Coast were working into Europe. And
Yeah, exactly.
all the guys here in Ontario were working into nowhere.
Raise your hand if you're on 6 meters. No, I'm not going to raise my hand. I don't have 6 meters. I took down the antennas, unfortunately. Oh well. Well, I could use your station remotely.
You could. And Simon, I worked Sugar 51RR the other day on 6. That was, I think, a new country for me. I think on Tuesday. I was supposed to be working. I was testing equipment. That's what I was doing. You know, we had some good time. So with that, and a lot of people asked. I got a lot of emails about the chokes. We mentioned chokes last week, and if you didn't hear that, I about 10 years ago drank the choke Kool-Aid thanks to an article written by the Yankee Contest Clipper Club, and another article by it'll come to me. But if you're not using chokes on your feed lines, and I mean both ends, up at the antenna and down at the radio, you're not hearing as well as you can. That's one thing. And it really knocks down your RFI with chokes. I find I hear better. And we had, and then I went out and I bought them from, I think it was Newegg. No, it wasn't New, it was Mouser. I was buying them in 50s and using them everywhere. And then I found out that like all those wall cubes, they're all terrible, and they all generate a lot of noise. So, so what's so over to JP. JP, what's on? What do you got going on this week?
Yeah, I want to remind people that we are still taking pre-orders on the Maestros. So if you send me an email to sales@flexradio.com, that's Sierra Alpha Lima Echo Sierra @flexradio.com, I will be able to give you $50 off of the Maestro. So that's,
you just gotta wait for a bit for it to show up, right? We have a little parts issue.
Yeah.
Everybody has a little parts issue. It's not just related to us. It's starting to come back, but it's going to be longer than anybody likes. But they will come out. And even a friend of mine bored one of my Maestros. I got to get it back from Andy. Andy came on last week, so all of a sudden I can't get hold of him. I know he's going to watch this, so good.
I'm waiting for mine. It's going to be right here. Well, actually.
Oh yeah, even you don't have one.
Yeah.
So we put a video out last week on how to use your microphone on your radio and align it. I had a lot of great feedback on that. I had a few users who had been longtime Flex users that didn't realize some cool tricks. And one of the greatest tricks I think that Flex has done is the ability to set your mic gain without actually going into transmit. So that you can have the mic level meter blipping up and down, and you don't even touch the push to talk. And that's a
Interesting.
setting in the audio settings. And whoever worked all those JAs on 6 meter on Wednesday, I don't want to talk to you. You didn't give me a call sign, but no, I saw the Midwest, and I think the West Coast was working JAs. I don't think I have JAs in my log on 6. So, and I'm all kidding. That's wonderful. I'm glad you guys are all having fun. And there's been some, I think I can say this out loud. I'll probably get in trouble. There've been some testing for some of the satellite guys running FT4 on the RS-44 satellite. So, and most of the guys doing that testing are using Flex radios. So that was pretty cool. So let's, without any further ado, JP, you got anything else? And then we'll flip over to introduce Toby. And
no, that's about it. Like that's about it.
That's about it. So Toby's from Troy Radio in Troy, Texas, which I've never been to. And you also help us out, right, in our own lab, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And Toby does repairs, but he also is the doing a lot of work on Flex 1500s, 5000s, and 3000s. But so we're going to talk a little bit like that. And I got one of those nice windows pop up and says, "Would you like to reboot your computer?" And I say, "Remind me tomorrow." That's why you use Windows 10 Pro, nothing else. And so we were talking earlier about, sort of what he sees in a lot of repairs and etc. But so, Toby, what got you in ham radio?
Oh, wow. Well,
I warned you I was going to ask you that.
I bet. No, before I got into ham radio, of course, like a lot of hams, started out in CB. I was very, very young. My brother Tim drove in the driveway one day with an El Camino and a couple of rabbit ears on it. And wow, what's that?
With the car or the antenna?
First talk on the radio. And from that point on, we had a ham in town that was my Elmer, and it just went from there. I just loved it, and that's all I've done ever since. I haven't sometimes worked at churches, and then it's always been radio. Always been radio.
Were you the projectionist in high school too?
Yeah.
Yeah, aren't we all? I think it's like required training.
We had a high school radio station. Yeah.
Yeah, I also did lighting for theater. I actually loved that. That was a great time. Yeah. And by the way, I don't know if you guys saw that Renko showed up. Renko's the designer of the PGXL here. I'll put him back up here. So, hey, Renko, thanks for joining us.
Hey, cool.
And what a great amp. And I know everybody's been flogging their PGXL flat out on 6, including...
I have it right here.
JP.
Let me kiss it. Thank you so much.
The next text is going to pop up and say, "Do you have MEFA on? Have MEFA on." So
that's where my PGXL went.
That's right. You probably
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny how that's done to other. And I was listening to a QSO Today podcast the other day. I had to do some driving, and it was the same thing with a lot of hams that started. Just that was the technology that was available in high school. We didn't know what we wanted, but we just know it was cool. Whether you were doing something with electrons, or you were the projectionist, or you did the audio stuff for the theater, or whatever. And I hope sort of that still comes today. And you can't really teach it. You sort of just are wired that way, no pun intended, to pursue it a bit more.
Yeah.
Cool. So then at some point in time, and by the way, I want to know, for everybody's here, how much of the equipment can you identify behind Toby while this is going on? Type of thing. And so, Toby, you've done Motorola.
No. How many spectrum analyzers can you identify?
Yeah, you already know the answer.
There you go.
You already know the answer. What was it?
Yeah. No, I'm just putting it out there so people can start guessing. I'm trying to.
So did ham radio lead to all that behind you? Is that what happened?
Yep, pretty much. Yep, it sure did. Amateur radio, when it caught my attention young and started doing it, making friends on the air, doing things like that. Of course, being young and only working summer jobs, I couldn't afford brand new equipment, so you had to learn how to build it. And even back then, that was something that you did. You built your own equipment. You can do that today, but most people, with the amount of money it takes to get into it, really, you buy stuff off there. But built everything I had. When we got to the point of having repeaters come along, started building repeaters and controllers and learning about logic and RF, the whole thing. And then...
Were you the young guy you can climb? Did you get that story too?
Yep. Oh yeah. Yep. Had to get up there, and so all of it ended up in me having a career in electronics, the schooling, all the way through. So, yep, it was it's been a great ride. And now that Flex has come along, and I'm in this, I'll call it family, which it really seems you guys have a family going here. It's great. I love it, and it's just more technology, more things to learn, more things to do.
That's pretty cool. And even from your perspective, even though we can't see the semiconductors that you and I used to play with, whether it was tubes, and we're really dating ourselves, and the inductors or whatever, there's still a lot of RF work that happens to the point where you can start to jam this data into the FPGA, right? And then start to deal with it. So perfect. And then let's you're doing a lot of repair. Well, you're doing repairs on the traditional line, the 1500, the 3000, and the 5000, and
Firewire stuff.
yeah, we'll talk about that. And so we'll work our way up. We'll start with the 1500. You do occasionally get a bunch in still with broken BNC connectors. Any advice you want to say, or if you have a problem, they can give you a call?
Yeah, the BNC connector on the 1500 has been an issue for a while, and the only advice to that is to try to use a soft jumper up to the 1500. If you're using it on your bench or something like that, come in your shack with whatever good quality cable you have, but then just put a small soft jumper, maybe even a foot long, which will take a lot of the tension off of that. And as you move it around, or that cable moves, you won't have that problem, especially if you go to pick it up and move it and forget the cable's attached.
Ooh.
So that'd be a short, like 12-inch RG174 with a couple of BNCs.
Sure.
Or whatever.
Yeah, RG174 or even 58 is good. But I see people having LMR 400 directly up to it, and boy, that's rigid and it's hard. So 58, 174, something like that would be great as a small soft jumper, and you're not going to lose anything at HF frequencies. That little 1 foot, it's not even going to know it's there.
That's right, of course. And we see people do that with handhelds too, right? And then the SMA breaks off. And that's even worse. And generally, those of us that have burnt our fingers on soldering irons. And by the way, I got to show you this. My Weller soldering iron that I bought for about $8 when I was 16. I plugged it in like 2 weeks ago, and it was cold. It wouldn't heat up. And I've soldered everything with that, including SMT, because it was the only thing I had lying around, just because I could get in there. So I had to buy a new one. And they just don't make them like they used to. This was $35.
Oh,
Canadian.
wow.
Canadian, like so 20.
Oh,
What was I going to say? Okay, cool. So what are you seeing? You have some concern over the 3000s, I guess. So we wanted to not talk about that, but you get those in for repair too. And is there a common problem you see, or is it all over the place?
Well, it's really all over the place. Everything from, and of course we got lightning season coming up now, and we're going to see a lot of that happen. But pretty much it's all the normal things you see happen with the radios, final transistors, blowing out because of bad SWR, connections, things like that. Also on the FireWire equipment, there has been an issue where if you're reaching behind your unit trying to plug in your FireWire, you can actually plug it in upside down, and you short out the chip, and you have to send it in for service. We do have a fix for that, which is soldering that shell on top so it can't spread apart. If you're going to put it in upside down, you're going to have to really, really try. But the ones that haven't been done like that, we see that come in quite a bit.
Okay. And you can still fix those. I mean, I've almost done it, but the story is, and I remember this from my 3000 days, look, turn the light on, take your time, and make sure it's correct.
Right. Well, and for me, it's really wonderful. I've been repairing for more years than I can count. But with the Flex radio, with this Legacy series, we have so many people that have them. And I guess for a while they thought, well, it's broken, we can't get it fixed, or it's going to cost too much. And I'm amazed at how grateful people are when you get it done and you send it. It's like, you've got my baby working again. And they just love it. And it's so gratifying for me to know that I got your piece of equipment that, you spent money on, and it's working now, and you can have it again, which may also lead to them looking at sales of newer stuff later on. So that's always good, but it's a real fun.
Right. And you mentioned lightning, and that's a tough one, right? Because it's really hard. And this, by the way, applies to all radios, and including the 6000, et cetera, that in a lightning strike, it's real bad. I mean, unless it's something simple, you can't really guarantee anything because the values may have changed, or you may have premature failure, a year from now or whatever, correct?
Right. And what happens is, if it's an ESD event, which we say that when lightning strikes nearby, electrostatic discharge gets to your antenna, or even from a buildup of electrostatic from sand coming through the air, high winds like that, there's protections in the radios that will guard against that. But absolutely nothing will guard against if you get hit, if your antenna gets hit, or you get hit at home, or it comes through like that. Pretty much you're not going to repair that radio. And even if there was a chance, and we've done a few, there's no guarantee. Other components in the radio get stressed. They can fail 6 months later. They could fail a day later. So if we do an ESD radio, we always make sure the customers are aware that it's going to work when it leaves the shop. But, I don't want to call it roll the dice, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Dan talked about a few weeks ago about the insurance from ARRL.
It's great.
Yeah, I'm going to get that. That.
And we provide a letter, just like Flex does. We provide an insurance letter that says this was an ESD event. We give them the serial number and all that. So yeah, we do the same thing if you send it in here.
Okay, very good.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you seeing on 5000s? You like the 5000?
Oh, I love the 5000. It's really cool for all the cool things you can do with it, mixing and matching things to it. What I see with 5000s, other than that Firewire issue, are, I think, mostly finals going out from bad SWRs, or what we call the RFIO board. It's the input board for the RF for the BNCs and all that. They'll go out. That's a unit that does a lot of switching constantly, so there's a lot of wear and tear on it, and those will go out. But pretty much, if you don't have an ESD event, a 5000, boy, they just run. They're a tank.
And then of course, oh crap, what's his name? K9NS software.
Oh yeah, Darren,
thank you. Darren's done a ton of work with taking 2.59, I think was the last Flex produced power SDR software, and took it to the next layers and some amazing, I call them creature comforts and cool things and stuff. And I've never gotten a chance to really play with it because somebody borrowed my 1500 about 7 years ago, and I haven't seen it since. I know where it is, and the 1500.
Call Dan and tell him to give it back.
Yeah. No, it's not Dan actually. But,
okay.
But the 1500 is a great radio. Like the microwave guys love it for an IF radio, for transverter work. The moon bounce guys, some of them use that as well. So
we could talk about transverters.
Camping with them? That's always been a question of mine.
What's that?
Do they ever backpack those 1500s? Do they ever make a man pack with an HF antenna? Does anybody that you know of?
I wouldn't be surprised, because you can get now like a Microsoft Surface. Right. And because the 1500 is USB only connection, then it's very plausible to do. My friend and I do a lot with ski racing, do timing and stuff. And we had to fly out to Nikiska, which is out in Alberta, Canada. And so we're stuck in this hotel room high up in the mountains, and we have laptops and stuff we do. And so we're on the 4th floor, and I thought this through, and the mountain hotel rooms tend to have windows that can actually open with no screens. So there is a video of me in the hotel room winding up a water bottle and firing out at a tree, and so we were there for 10 days. So we actually worked some HF with the 1500 and an end-fed hunk of wire that was launched way out the tree, and we would just sort of close the window of the night. So because it doesn't weigh anything, right? And it's easy to pack type of thing. So I don't know. Maybe somebody here's done it as well. But cool. Was there anything else you want to add to the group today? And
Well, other than like I said, I'm just really happy to be part of the Flex family, and working on these radios has not only taught me a lot more about SDR, but I've been able to use a lot more of our equipment that we have toward that end. And so trying to keep up with the workload. The radios are here, the tickets are open, and I'm going as fast as I can.
Now, that's your website, right? TroyRadio.net.
Yes, TroyRadio.net. Yep.
Okay. I noticed you got an SDR 1000 on the front cover. I've never used one.
Oh man, I'll tell you, that's a cool little radio.
Oh yeah,
works good. There's a guy on the air that talks every day on his, and with the way he's got his audio set, you'd think it was a monster station. It just sounds beautiful.
Oh, I'm glad you brought up audio too. So on the Power SDR world, and I know the answer to this, but you want to tell us how there's a proper procedure to align your audio, right? Because there's 3 places to set it up. Because you work your mic audio through the system.
Right. What I've done in the past is I've gone just full duplex off of the transverter port, not broadcasting out, with a set of headphones and watching the display, and I've done it that way. Other than that, there's just so many different ways of different kinds of audio, different setups that people have. I don't do a whole lot of setup on it, but I know with Darren's software, he's just made some amazing adds to it that let people do some crazy stuff. I think you can even do your audio post mixer and pre mixer in that one, where you can't in a lot of the other software. So I think it's a lot of interesting stuff he's done to it.
Right. And you can actually play too. You can learn all about bins and noise blankers. And I forgot all the terms because Steve Hicks taught me them about 10 years ago, but I've long since forgot them. But if you really want to tinker with managing the RF as it goes through the FPGA type of thing, that's really some cool stuff as well. So, well, that's all I have today. And then what's your turnaround time that you're seeing right now, Toby, that somebody sends something in roughly? And believe me, I know it varies week to week, right? All of a sudden, hey, we're almost cut up, and then a truck shows up, right?
Well, actually, that's what happened last week. I almost said the words in the morning meeting that we were caught up, and UPS came and just started
unloading,
and I'm like, wait a minute. And also something that we do. We are a commercial two-way shop for our local county, a couple of counties and stuff. So along with the ham radio repair, we also do commercial repair, and public safety type repair, fire department, safety of life. That comes it's got a priority level. So I would say that right now we're at about 3 weeks. If you send something in, we'll get it in, let you know by email that it's here. Let you know when we transfer it to the bench, and by the time you get it back, it's probably in that 2 to 3 week area.
Okay. Then now we meet before these go on, and I try to prep everybody with the questions I'm going to ask them so they're not surprised like a politician from a type of thing. But we sort of talked about it, but I never did ask you if somebody has, because you're a Motorola dealer as well, had a Motorola radio they wanted to program for amateur frequencies. Is it something that they can send in for service?
Yes, we're very amateur friendly on anything like that. Yep.
Okay.
There's no problem. And a lot of times I'll have people not even send the radio in. They'll have the ability, just not the knowledge. And so just give me an email, give me a call. I'll walk you through it, but if you do want to send it in, sure. We take care of that. In fact, we do. We're doing the P25 modes now with a lot of the Motorola and Kenwood radios for amateur radio. Yep,
I remember those.
Wow, yeah. That's a breath of fresh air because we've been really pushing about mentoring and for us that have been around for a long time. If you were as a new ham and Toby, my first radio that somebody gave me, I had no money, was but I got on HF and CW was Heathkit HR10B and a DX40, which only did AM and CW.
Right.
And but it was. And I'm going to say this over and over. It says, here, use it, take it.
Yeah.
When you're done with it, give it to the next guy. You can't sell it. And I did.
That's
I gave it to someone else.
That's what we do.
And And if you're an older ham here, just remember what got you to where you are, and be helpful to the new hams. And even Toby going the extra mile here for I'm pretty smart with I've programmed pretty much every radio, but I don't have a rib. And although I did buy a bag of bits that's supposed to allow it to do it, but I've never cracked it open. But type of thing. But now I know who I can talk to. But maybe I can get that MOF 230. Maybe I can get that sucker reprogrammed correctly on 220, because there was only a handful of those. And okay, I'm going to post this so that Ranko and Ray can see the message. So Ray, this is for you if you're still watching. And if you guys don't know how to get hold of each other, send me an email. I'll put you in touch with each other. So but that's awesome that you're able to help the amateur community worldwide for that, and we all do. And that's about
that's part of that's part of the staple of amateur radio is experimentation, learning, and if you have a knowledge that's pretty heavy knowledge in something, I believe you have a responsibility to pass that on.
Right. Yeah. And if you're looking for that knowledge, because there's a lot of stuff on the internet, you just don't know what to believe. Challenge it. The person who knows it will gladly explain it. And I try to do that. And I apologize if I don't, because I'm silly enough to answer from an iPhone sometime when you're just short. But I always try to qualify any answer with some details to go with that. So if you're a new ham and you ask a question and say, and don't ask which is the best HF antenna to put up, because it's going to say, what's the best car to buy. So you'll need a bit more information, like which is the best.
I always tell those guys and gals, I say, first, before you can hit a target, you need to have a target. Think about what you want to do, get that set. Now you can try to hit that target by finding things along the way. And it works really good.
And sometimes you don't know what the target is. Yeah, you just, like when you started, you knew, wow, I talked on this microphone and I heard a guy from wherever.
Yeah.
And I think I was trying to remember the first time it was I grew up as a kid in North Bay, Ontario, which is a couple 100 miles, 300 kilometers north of Toronto. And I remember helping out with a canoe race when, long before cell phones, hams did all this community service to coordinate, bring in results or whatever. And North Bay had a big canoe club, and I remember being out in the lake and operating this radio, or it might have been on a demo in a mall or something, where I sat down and there was like an SB 201, and you put these headphones on, and it's like a contest. You put headphones on, it's a whole different world, right? You've everybody else ceases to exist, and things. So, JP, anything in closing?
If you hear a thunderstorm, unplug your radio, unplug your antennas. That's the closing.
Yeah. I think I said this a couple of weeks ago. There's no app for us remote people that throws the feed line out the window.
Mm-hmm.
So I am actually building something that came up on the internet. Some friends shared with me. It's going to be on a linear actuator. It's just going to pull the feed lines this far apart. And I get it. You
told me about that, yeah.
Yeah, I've told people before. It's not perfect, but it's better. And if I get a direct hit, everything will melt. But
I've been on the phone with a ham this week, and he told me that it's a no ham trick to, every time that there's a storm, unplug your antennas and, I don't know, put them inside of a jar. I didn't understand the physics.
Later. But don't throw it on a concrete floor. That's not supposed to be good.
That's not good.
That's discussed in Polyphaser has a document, and I have said this before. There's a great chat that happened at Contest University a few weeks ago about by Ward Silver, and I've had the fortunate to sit down and have dinner with Ward one day, and it was great. So to meet a wonderful guy, had some great ideas. I want to get my Oculus Rift up on a waterfall, with Smart SDR, and then you can just start. Okay, I want to zoom into this signal. You get the idea, but
oh man, one last thing on the Lightning before we go, that I get a lot of questions about with people. They say, "What's the best way to ground and do all your ground?"
I was going to ask you that.
Well, it's so dependent on what you have, but one thing you've got to remember. The whole idea of grounding is not to protect your station, it's to protect you. Okay. You can replace a radio, you can replace an antenna, but if you're sitting there at your metal top desk, or something around you like
One of
that,
those U.S. government desks.
yeah,
Yeah.
window frames that are made out of metal, things like that. The whole idea of that is to bond all that to ground, so that if it does come in, it goes through there and it doesn't get you as an operator. And that's one of the biggest safety things. I mean, again, you can replace a radio, you can't replace you.
That's absolutely correct. And Ward does go over stuff like that as well. And if you it's about the repeater guys know how to do this, right? Because everything's bonded, and average lightning strike is about 30,000 amps. You can do the math on the rest of it. And what you want to do is the whole system to raise in voltage and drop at the same time. That's why we have all these low impedance. Impedance.
Yep.
Can't speak. Gentlemen, thank you for joining. Have a great weekend. JP, you have a great weekend. I'm sure we'll talk.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Left to go to.
I'm going to go fix this BNC connector.
Is that out of 1500?
That's a 1500 right there. Yep.
Look at all those relays for the filter board.
Yeah. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you had a good time. We'll see you next week. 73.
See you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
You know what? This is the blooper because it's then broadcast, and it says, "Are you sure?" Here we go.